Good morning, Michael. How you doing?
Morning, Dae-Lee.
I appreciate you coming through for this bridge builder conversation. You ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Excited to sit with you.
Good stuff, good stuff. So I call you Michael and I didn't introduce you or call on your title because very much I like to start all these conversations with just learning about your origin story. Like, who is Michael? Where you from? How did you grow up? What makes you you? So how about we start there?
All right. So you wouldn't tell by my accent, but I was born in Union, New Jersey.
Okay.
And that's where my people come from, both my mom and my dad's side of the family. So it's just outside of New York City. Very blue-collar town. My dad's from North Arlington, New Jersey, Bergen County. A lot of people from Bergen County and
Nice.
immigrating because it's super dense. And my mom's from Union, and that's where I was through first grade. And then my dad had this opportunity where AT&T and Western Electric was giant. All the Bell companies were together at that point, and they were building basically facilities and manufacturing plants in like every senator's district they could, because they did a bunch of federal work.
Gotcha.
And they created the center down in Greensboro that was where they moved all purchasing and human resources and technology, and they moved like almost all their back office down there. Maybe it was 4,000 or 5,000 Yankees.
Gotcha.
And anyway, my dad had that opportunity. He was young. They were young when they had me. Like there's pictures of me at fraternity parties.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they were 20 and 21 when they had me.
Gotcha.
That was a good surprise.
Nice. And so when did y'all transition here?
So that was first grade.
Okay, first
Moved
grade.
down to Greensboro, and it was funny talking to my dad about it because he would come back. He's like, "I got to teach you a new word every time I come back because they've got like other words they use down there."
Gotcha.
And I was convinced I was going to have to learn another language. I mean,
Nice.
he's a first grader.
Sure.
Anyway, so I was in Greensboro from first grade to seventh grade, and then we moved back to New Jersey to a town called Basking Ridge. Another veteran community outside of the city.
Okay.
And it was the headquarters for AT&T. And was there until my junior year in high school and back to Greensboro. So I finished high school in Grimsley High School, Grimsley Grit in Greensboro.
Nice. Nice. Back and forth.
Yep.
So what was the other language you learned? Southern?
It was just, it was words like y'all. And
Gotcha.
I mean, it was just funny. I mean, but he'd come back with some colloquialism every single time.
Oh.
And it was just my brother and I. So we're super tight. He's 3 years younger. He lives up in Roanoke.
Okay. Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Moving so much. I mean, we had each other's backs
Sure.
because, being that new kid in town, is always an adjustment.
Gotcha. So just one sibling, a brother?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just two.
And who's the oldest?
I
Okay. Cut it up. What's the gap between you two?
just 3 years.
3 years? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
But it's fun when he's got this unbelievable living life. Like he is the happiest, kindest person that I know, period.
Nice.
And it's amazing having a sibling that way. It's like God just dropping a blessing on you.
Gotcha.
I love it when I bring him out and introduce him to friends, and friends will ask, "So what do you do?" He's like, "I play a lot of disc golf. I like to paddle. I'm on the river a bunch. I play guitar every day if I can." And they're like, "No, what do you do?" He's like, "That's what I do. What I do for a living
Gotcha.
is I
Okay.
work in IT for the Roanoke City school system."
Oh.
Anyway,
No, I like that perspective, which very much fits in kind of why we're starting our conversation here is like, yes, what we do is a part of who we are, but it's not who we are.
right.
Oh, interesting. So between the two, New Jersey, North Carolina, where do you feel you're more at home?
Oh my God, this state. I'm so home in North Carolina. I studied at Chapel Hill. First job was in Dallas.
Oh,
And 3 years there. Met my wife while I was there, but we didn't get married till we were in Chicago. Then moved up to Chicago, and we were there for 6-7 years. But honestly, every moment I was out of the state, I was hungry, jonesing
Gotcha.
to be back. There's just, I don't know, it feels like my people.
Gotcha.
I get the culture. It's funny being born somewhere else, but when I'm asked where home is,
Sure.
Absolutely, North Carolina. We've been here now since '98.
Gotcha.
You know, all our kids were born here. I've got 3 kids. So.
No, no. I've heard it said, I feel like this person was from Chicago. It's like, you know, the sun shines differently in Charlotte. And I believe I feel like there's more cloudy weather up there than there is in Charlotte. So, but it's interesting they put it that way. So you say you went to Chapel Hill, correct? What did you study?
I studied business.
Okay.
I actually went to NC State for 2 years because at first I was on an engineering track, and I had that moment where I was in one of my classes and I looked around and said, either everybody in here has this wrong or I've got it wrong.
Gotcha.
And when I wanted to study business at the time, NC State didn't have the business program that I wanted. So I transferred to Chapel Hill and finished there. And
Gotcha.
it's great. I ended up with these 2 completely distinct sets of friends from college. And so many of them ended up in Charlotte.
Oh, really? Sweet.
That's been a great transition too, because when I was coming out of school, everybody who wanted a great job was either going to DC, New York, or Atlanta. And now, you know,
On Charlotte.
we do a great job of getting our own talented kids from kind of this 4-state region to come here and start their careers.
Oh, that's sweet. Good stuff. Good stuff. So again, you know, I'm an artist. I produce as well as I'm a recording artist, and I feel like you can learn a lot about people, or some things about people, by their tastes in art. So is there a favorite song you grew up listening to, or, you know, a piece of art that just sticks in your brain?
Yeah. So I love art. I mean, I read this great book called The Creative Habit by Twyla Thorpe.
Okay.
And her premise is that, like, creativity and innovation is not a lightning strike, that it's a discipline.
Sure.
And I don't know if you
Sure.
relate to that.
No, I do. I do. And it's funny, I appreciate the fact that I kind of preface it as I use both sides of my brain. It's like I love being creative, but at the same time, I don't know one creative project that I have worked on where there wasn't like a strategic plan around it, you know, a timeline and all that jazz, which, again, I love people who are heads are always in the clouds, and sometimes I envy that. It's like, I wish I could just be in the clouds, but at the same time, I'm like, I actually want to complete what I'm doing. So, no, I very much can identify with that.
So her premise, and I subscribe to it, is I try every day to put myself in positions to be inspired, to find connections that I wouldn't normally make. Because I have better days. I feel like I do better work. I help develop people around me that are on my team. And that could be music. That could be popping down to the Beckler,
Sure.
you know, to see something. Could be a book I'm reading. Could be art around us. You
Sure.
know, we've got this great rotating exhibit within the office. You know, music, my love of music is super broad. I love the live stuff. That's why, you know, you and I meeting through Music Everywhere initiative.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's passion work for Rick Thurmond and
Gotcha.
I. You know, favorite bands. You know, I loved the Pixies as a young man.
Sing me a song.
That's not
Sing me a song.
That's not happening at all. I do not have the vocals for that.
I feel like the name rings a bell. I just don't know a song, Michael. I just need you to give me a melody.
I can quickly grab my phone and give you a little bit of Bun Machine.
You can do that later. Gotcha. Cool. Good stuff. Good stuff. What kind of band are they?
They did a pretty good job of creating their own genre. They'd probably get thrown in with like alternative rock, you know, Boston based.
Gotcha.
Big influence on so many of the bands today. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. So 98, I came to Charlotte, and 2001.
Okay.
Studied at the Art Institute, multimedia web design. Charlotte of early 2000s, very different from Charlotte 2020s. Is there any difference that pops out in your mind?
Yeah, so much. I mean, the stats that were shared as the city was doing its 2040 vision plan, I think 18% foreign born now. That was not the city we moved to,
Sure.
in 98
Sure.
and 2001. I think that's a richness to our community. We're grown up,
Sure.
coming into our own.
Why do you feel like that's a richness?
I think it's really hard to be a complete city without having a global perspective, kind of understanding the broader world,
Gotcha.
and there's nothing like immigrants. I mean, those are tough people that have made really big decisions and have big hopes for life, and and then they join your community and they become part of the fabric of it. That's
Gotcha.
rich. We're Catholic. I got a St. Peter's Catholic, the Jesuit church on Trine Street. And when my daughter was going through confirmation, part of the classwork, part of the development for her was to go out to some of the other immigrant Catholic churches. And it was just amazing, seeing the commonality and yet the variety of the culture and the food, the music.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of what else. Man, our food scene.
Sure. Yeah.
There's good and bad things that have happened on our music scene. I don't know, maybe that was also the eyes of a younger man. But it's so, there's so much entrepreneurship right now in the culinary scene. I mean, we've grown as a city, there's more people, so then there's more tastes.
Sure.
And I think there's just more room for people to be able to do more. We've also developed a lot because, part of the grind early on in Uptown and South End is there just wasn't enough space. People, where are the retailers? Well, we don't have any space to lease them.
Gotcha.
And now it just keeps popping again and again. You get these little spots, and developers are getting smarter and understanding that, the personality of their building is going to be articulated through these entrepreneurs on the ground level.
So you're getting into the career space and kind of what you do now, which honestly, I don't understand a lot of it. I would say, again, being president, CEO of Charlotte Center City Partners, maybe 5 years I've known that you guys existed.
Yep.
And I believe, I'm trying to think how it may have been through Music Everywhere. I'm not sure if it was through something else. But just as I learned what I now know about what you all do, and obviously you tell me because this is from the outside,
I love it.
is that you guys are tasked with ensuring that Uptown Charlotte is thriving and it is full of life, energy, whatever that looks like, whether that's music, whether that's festivals, whether that's, Thanksgiving parade. That is what you all are tasked with. And it was what I'm learning about is interesting to me that that's somebody's job to do that. It doesn't just happen. And obviously now it's like, obviously those things don't just happen. But I guess if you could, educate me.
Yeah.
What do you do? What is this organization, Center City Charlotte, do?
So it's broader than Uptown. It
Okay.
includes South End. It includes a little bit of Midtown. But on a planning basis, we even look broader.
Okay.
It's uptown in the adjacent neighborhoods. And, our friend Hugh McCall was one of the founders of this work.
Gotcha.
So it was him and Harvey Gantt and Ed Crutchfield and Bill Lee and George Ivey and a bunch of names of really important leaders in our community across the past decades. But in 1978, they had a bold vision that for us to thrive as a region, we had to have a vibrant center city.
Gotcha.
And then they created an organization to own that mission. And that's kind of been our purpose, across these 4+ decades. We lead with urban design, kind of the science of placemaking.
Okay.
Which, for any of your viewers that don't know that course of study, it's amazing. I didn't know it existed.
Sure. I feel like the last 2 years I've learned a little bit more about it. And again, yeah, it is amazing. It's like, again, these things don't just happen. They're planned and they're orchestrated. This is here, this is there, and it's like strategic.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So we lead with urban design and research. We're the leader of economic development for this place. So investors, major employers, small businesses, talent, the development of residential, working with the county on placement of parks and design of parks, the way transit meets it. But the breadth of what we work on is so wide. We're a little bit of a utility player. So, the last couple of years, we worked a lot on a housing instability and homelessness initiative.
Okay.
We're working on a new initiative that I'm really excited about that's really focused on high tech and entrepreneurship and small business growth and how do those three come together and how can we have a better environment. I love the work of Music Everywhere, and I feel like we're just cracking the surface on it. Yeah, we've been working on it for
sure.
years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Now this is very interesting. So when it comes to the work that you do, I'm sure I want to know how you even got into this work with Charlotte Center City Partners.
Circuitously.
So
Circuitously. It's one of those roads.
And I guess I asked because, and even we start talking about origin story, because I believe that, our lives are like journeys, We may start here, take a left, right, here, and we end up where we are. And that, in my mind, that is not arriving. That's only, a stop on the journey, and you continue. So I'm always interested in how, say, your origin story, even what you studied in school, your life between New Jersey and North Carolina played into now what you do and I guess your why.
So how did I end up in this role? So the first couple jobs out of school were procurement, logistics, kind of just management training stuff. First jobs out of school. I got my MBA when I was in Chicago, and coming out of school was a natural opportunity. I was newly married. Okay. And it was a chance to look at North Carolina, and my wife said, "Why don't we take a look at Charlotte?" I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna look. I'm gonna go find because I'm dying to be back there."
Gotcha.
And I came to Charlotte as a banker with First Union, doing big loan facilities and kind of learning that industry. And it was in media and telecom, and helping finance startup cellular tower businesses and cellular businesses and local phone companies and stuff like that. So after 3 years of banking, another 3 years of entrepreneurship, I just had this hunger. What I found is I was living on airplanes.
Gotcha.
I didn't read the local paper. I knew my neighbors, and that was it. No relationships with people at church. I was heading towards not being the dad I wanted to be, or a husband, or friend.
Gotcha.
My mom and dad moved here after we started having kids, so I wasn't getting time with them. And I just So anyway, I began this search. I kind of looked 360. I looked at everything. I mean, I did a little bit of a exploration of seminary. I looked at going back to banking. It has that for
Gotcha.
a dichotomy.
And how old were you in this period?
I was 32. Yeah.
It's a little early for a midlife crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was not a crisis. It was seeking purpose.
Gotcha.
It really was. Anyway, what I decided is and I was amazed at how willing people were to sit with me and get coffee that I hadn't met. So
Gotcha.
I'd get coffee with you and you'd suggest 2 people and you'd connect me and one of the 2 would agree to have coffee and then and that was 3-4 months of that. And it was funny how many people would give me some advice and then they'd suggest a book. So I was plowing through books and then I got into a rhythm of every time I'd meet with somebody, I'm like, do you have a book you recommend?
Gotcha.
And I was just trying to feed my mind. But I decided I wanted to do mission-based work. And I thought, let's do it for a decade, and then reassess, see if, this is something that is my purpose,
Sure.
or is this something I'm just trying to figure out? And anyway, I began to interview for some things and meet with people and share with them, all right, I want to do purpose-based work, help me figure out what that means. I ended up taking kind of a half step. I joined the Chamber of Commerce, which is purpose-based, but it allowed me to use the things that I've been trained to do and that I experienced doing. I was their CFO and I worked with their CEO, Carol Gray, on strategy.
Explain real quick, because I don't understand. You say it's purpose-based. Explain how the Chamber of Commerce is.
Sure. So they exist not for profit, but to grow jobs and investment in our community in an intentional way.
Okay.
And to pull the community together, the small business community, to give it a voice, to work on issues of workforce readiness and investment in education, transportation systems, kind of a lot of the backbone stuff
Gotcha.
of the community. And anyway, Carol had been CEO of Chambers for probably 40 years. So it was a great blessing for me. And he was so generous with his time. And at the end of most days, he'd sit down and we'd just talk about what happened in our city that day.
Gotcha.
And this was new to me. Like, my background that I shared with you, it was kind of related to this. So he taught me a ton. I was with him for 3 years. And then this opportunity with Center City Partners presented itself, and I was not looking to leave. I was loving what I was doing. But there were 2 members of that search committee that just knew me through that work and felt like they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Who are those people? You don't mind sharing?
Sure. It was Jim Palermo and Krista Tillman.
Okay.
So Jim was the head of real estate for Bank of America under Mr. McCall.
Okay.
And then Krista was the former state president for AT&T. And then Michael Marsicano too.
Gotcha.
And he was already running the foundation. And we had known each other just through that other work. And my parents attend the same church that he does.
Gotcha.
And anyway, they strongly encouraged, and I remember this meeting with Jim Palermo where I was there to have breakfast with him to tell him that I was not going to be a candidate.
Okay.
It just wasn't what I wanted to do. And we were at Anderson's, which was this breakfast spot over in Elizabeth. And anyway, we're there, and he's banging the table as he's telling stories, and he keeps going in his pocket and puts something in his mouth. Finally, I'm like, Jim, what are you doing? Is that glycerin? He's like, yeah, it's glycerin. I'm like, look, I'm going to tell you yes to whatever you ask me right now if you stop having the glycerin. Because you were way too fired up about this.
Sure.
And anyway, they saw something I hadn't seen. And then as I began to look into it, I began to see not what the organization was, but what it could be and the way it could serve. And just it was this platform for good.
Gotcha.
Where I got to bring my spirit, my faith, my hunger to serve into a role. we've been able to, over time, have this incredible board of directors, and really a great team.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of alumni. Like, it's been fun. Anyway, I thought I would do this for 5 years. It's now been 17.
Okay. Still enjoying it?
Still enjoying it. Still fresh. Still, the nightstand is full of books connected to this work.
Gotcha.
When I travel, it's been fun. My wife doesn't even complain about, when
Travel.
I travel, that I want to go and explore the city we're in.
Gotcha.
Because cities are incredible laboratories, and they're also different. And it's fun to try to learn from other places and see what we can bring home.
That's interesting. Obviously Charlotte, the way I view Charlotte is, and honestly, what kept me here after I graduated from the Art Institute was that it was very much like an infant of a city. And for me, I just see the possibilities and opportunity in that youth.
Remind me where you were raised.
I'm from Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
So Norfolk, Virginia, born and raised. We used to take family trips here to Charlotte to visit my uncle and aunt during the summer. So we got a taste here and there, and I think it was less about Charlotte and it was more about the people. It was just like a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh, we're going to Charlotte. You know what I mean? So it always, I guess, held a special place in my heart. And when
How is it different from Norfolk? Like, what was it?
Yeah, so Norfolk, the way I describe it is my journey is from the corner to the cul-de-sac journey. So born and raised Norfolk, Virginia, spent the majority of my years in a neighborhood called Huntersville. Love it. It's a black neighborhood. It's low income. Some of the things that come with that present. But I loved my neighborhood and also loved my family's position in it to where we were very distinct. We were a very faithful family. We were believers. And in that context is like, what are y'all doing here? You know what I mean? But what I loved about my family was the fact that we were very much who we were, regardless of the context and where we existed. And I feel like the neighborhood loved us for that, to where, again, I can still go back home and still see people who took different paths.
Sure.
But there's still mutual respect and love. And I just really value that, because I think a lot of times as human beings, we struggle with identity. And sometimes we end up going down roads or doing certain things because we see other people and like, oh, well, let me try that, find my identity. And that wasn't how I grew up. You know what I mean? We were very much, this is who we are. We're going to show up. We're going to love people. Balling was our thing. We played basketball in the neighborhood. So that's where I'm from. And then very much coming to Charlotte, living with my uncle and aunt while I went to school, was the cul-de-sac, living in the Ballantyne, Pineville area. So very much a 180 flip. A lot of difference, but very much plays into who I am, honestly, while I'm having these conversations, because my perspective was very much open to, I would call it, the value that exists outside of ourselves. It's like, it's very important that I love myself and that I value who I am, but at the same time, not close myself off to who others are and the value that exists. So yeah, that's where I'm from. And I mean, very much where I'm from, as well as where I came to here in Charlotte, is very core to who I am. But I want to tap back in and kind of,
stories.
Yeah.
I like your line though.
Going into the
Discovery.
Gotcha. Oh, absolutely. I think when we stop discovering, when we stop learning, when we stop reading, that's the beginning of a bigger issue. And honestly, I mean, even if we zoom out and look at our country, look at our city, I think the key determining how we progress is, are we continuing to learn and evolve with that learning, or are we dead set on, no, this is who we are, this is what we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. And even as I look at Charlotte and as I learn about Charlotte, the key founding families of Charlotte, and how things have been operated, and again, tying it into the work you do, And when you talk about placemaking, I just think about what have you learned about how Charlotte was created and how it exists and even how it operates, that has, I would say, been a challenge to, if you want to say, the vision you have, and the vision of Charlotte of being a welcoming place for everyone. So if you would share some of that, like what a challenge been to bridge building within your role?
Yeah, so I'll go organizational and personal.
Sure. Absolutely.
So our secret sauce as a community is we've done a new downtown plan. One of our secret sauces. We've done a new downtown plan every 10 years, all the way back to 1966 with the Odell plan. And these plans contemplate placemaking and land design and transportation systems and industries and job development. And every 10 years you look back and you're like, wow, that really, a lot of that got done. Or sometimes you look back and go, wow, we really got that wrong. So the beauty is every 10 years you're close.
You can assess.
You're learning over time and you're assessing. And so one of the big ahas for us, the 2020 vision plan, which was the one we worked on from 2009 to 2011.
Okay.
It was bold and it had lots of big ideas in it, and it helped prescribe, forecast our most prolific decade of growth in our center city.
Cool.
I mean, we grew almost 10 million square feet of office. We doubled our hotel rooms. We grew residential by a crazy amount, great density, transit oriented, all sounds like great things, right? And I mistakenly believed that with growth, there'd be more opportunity, so we'd close gaps on disparity. Well, during that period, disparity grew. So on the next plan, which is our 2040 vision plan, which we just adopted as a city, it is highly focused on how do we intentionally grow, because growth is generally good. Intentional growth is value-based growth. But then how do we pair that with our intentionality about the kind of city we want to be, so that we're investing in the things. So as there's growth, we're taking some of that growth and investing it into the kind of place we want to be. That we've got affordable housing and we've got affordable commercial space, and that we're creating a place that's inviting and welcoming to all. We also found through that period that there's a lot of our community that didn't feel comfortable in Uptown or South End. And yet, I think South End is a great example where it was pointed to as a place that was very, very mono. And now you go there, and I think it's done an incredible transformation in a short period of time in a place that's welcoming more broadly.
Interesting. So I appreciate you, I guess, being vulnerable and honest there, where it's like, disparities grew.
They did.
Within this great growth within our city, and I think that's something that's become more visible within our city and communicated, just the challenges we have in Charlotte with those things. But I'm wondering how, again, personally for you, because again, you're not your job, you're a human being, and I believe where you sit as a human being impacts how you're able to lead your organization. So I'm thinking when you realize that, even, and I mentioned earlier, just looking at like redlining, and even now when it comes to gentrification, how does that sit with you, and how does that move you in how you lead with Center City Parks?
Well, we're a mission-based place. So if we can't care deeply about the values of our community and be kind of values first, I mean, for profit? No, we need to lead with that. So one of the things that we committed to with these ahas and with the death of George Floyd and, just kind of a broader awakening,
Sure.
that we wanted to be a place that reflected our values on DE&I and who we were, how we did it, and what we achieved. So that means we hired this group called Kaleidoscope out of,
I know.
those guys?
Yeah, Chicago.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Doug Harris. Yep, absolutely.
They're awesome. And they dug deep on us.
Sweet.
And, it was something we shared with our board. We shared again and again with our team. And we're going to be a better place for it, kind of reporting out to our board every year. So we refreshed the way we operate. We refreshed, you mentioned a bunch of stuff we do that's very outward facing, event production, programming, rail trail lights, Thanksgiving parade, Charlotte Chat, 17 days of, artists.
Sure.
All right, how are we going to do that differently? How are we going to do calls for artists?
Sure.
In fact, you challenged us when we were working on the Music Everywhere.
Did I?
Yes, you did.
Remind me, how did I challenge?
We were over in Noda, and
I
had
remember where
our
you go.
readouts.
Sure.
And you're like, hey, this is great work. Y'all are doing important stuff, but give me the data for your survey work on the diversity of your respondents.
Sure.
And it was not good. And we weren't hearing from everybody.
Sure.
And that was an awesome challenge. It was a point that really changed that work. And I think it changed our consultants too. Because I think they were like, no, we got the voice, we got what we need. We can make some recommendations now. We doubled back, and I know that when they go to other communities, they will not accept that any longer. And it took work to try to get the voice of a more diverse community.
Absolutely.
Because not everybody responds the same way. Not everybody's in the same place.
Absolutely.
Connected the same way.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point is, one, how do you engage different people? But also thinking about where trust lies, and where it exists. I think you talked about South End and just how it was a monolith. And I think when it comes to bringing different people into different spaces or projects and things of that nature and honestly, at the root of this is I'm hoping there's a level of trust to where we can be honest with one another, where we can be like redlining and you're not like, I'm not sure if I want to talk about it as like this exists, So for me, it's the hope that when we value one another, when we understand each other, again, where you're from, what makes you tick, that we're able to create safe space and be honest with one another. And the hope for me is that not only as individuals are we able to move forward in a better way, but also collectively we can work together towards who we are, our city, and things of that nature. So I guess one more question for you is we kind of talked about the challenges, just realizing that, yes, disparities grew, and yes, there's challenges of the history of redlining, there's gentrification happening around, these things do exist. But how do you challenge yourself, and how would you challenge, whether it's your team at Charlotte Center City Partners or others who play a role in creating the city that we call home? How would you challenge them or encourage them to leverage their influence or their power to build bridges or create access and opportunity for others?
So for us, the opportunities seem endless. Like everything we work on creates another opportunity to build bridges, to bring more people in the community. Working on that 2040 vision plan, making sure that we got to know neighborhood leaders in places with parts of our community that won't come to a community meeting.
Sure.
So we're going to their neighborhood meetings and We're going into churches and university halls and libraries.
Sure.
But one of the things that we've been trying to do is continually ask the question of, who else should we bring into this room? Where are the non-expected players who can be a part of this conversation?
Sure.
I think you have to do it, with your programming. I think you need to do it with your teams. And we don't have it right, but we're going to keep working on it. And I think that's part of it too, is maybe you never have it fully right. Maybe this thing's a journey.
Sure. Absolutely.
But you have to stay committed to it. So,
Sure.
Every time you're looking at your team and you're making a hire, make sure you're eliminating blind spots, that you're, part of it too, is like digging back to the base stuff. Like one of the spots where we found incredible opportunity is our internship program. Well, turns out a bunch of our interns fall in love with our work, and then we see their skills and we hire out of it. So if we make sure that we've got diverse interns,
Sure.
we're going to have a more diverse workforce.
Sure.
And it's already played out.
Sure. That's fun. Yeah, creating those pipelines. And even when you talked about how you ended up at Charlotte Center City Partners, is there were people who knew about your work, who were interested in you, pretty much pulling you into that. So I think in the same way, as you say, with internships, being intentional, because it's not just going to happen. I don't think that is a reality, and time will not fix all things. But intentionality, I believe, is very important there. So let me see. I'm very interested, and I think this work of bridge building within the context of our society that has been very segregated. You exist here because you look like this, or you're from this type of wealth. You exist here. Again, we live in our silos. And I'll speak for you here, but for a white male in America who exists with a privilege that I don't and other people don't, I'm always interested in your work of creating opportunity access, bridge building. What have you lost in doing that work, that purposeful work? It could be time, it could be relationships. Like, hey, I don't want to do that. Has there been any loss in you venturing in that?
No, I don't think there's been loss. I think it's been gained. I think this intentionality on our work around programming and the people that we work with and our board and our committees, and there's been a richness to it. I think we're better. I think I'm better.
Cool.
But, I growing up in Greensboro, I was part of that group where we integrated the schools. I was in 4th grade, getting bused across town to a school that didn't want me there. But that was a big move in a lot of southern cities that I think did some really important work and created incredible relationships for me.
Sure.
High school I graduated from was more than half African American, Grimsley. I think we've lost ground. I think that by going back to neighborhood schools and losing that intentional integration, I think we lost decades. So we make all this progress,
Sure.
but then in something like that, I think it's incredible when young people go to school together and grow up together and know each other and know each other's families.
Sure.
Sleepovers and sports teams, and you create lifelong bonds.
Sure.
But no, to your question, these these have been enhancements, enrichments in our work and for me personally.
No, that's what's up. That's what's up. So, I want to give you a gift.
Nice.
This is Bridge Builder Motivational Journal. It is a 52-week, and it's autographed for you. But it's a 52-week quote journal and all of these quotes are focused on the work of bridge building and just what does that look like. Is also focused on doing the internal work. A lot of our conversation was about, again, who am I? Because I think a lot of times we like to produce things that we don't possess, meaning I want to do this, but we haven't even worked on ourselves to be able to produce those things. So this journal is very intentional about for someone who's serious about being a bridge builder, leveraging their influence to create opportunities for others. A year long of quotes, reflection items, as well as action items to, as I would call it, retrain our minds. Like, this is what we want to do.
Thank you for this.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's awesome.
Indeed. Yeah.
And I went through the Innovation Institute at the McCall Center.
Yep.
And I don't think they're doing anything longer. Did you ever?
I don't think so. Actually, my partner, David Butler, went through it, and I think that's where he met Rick Thurman.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was such a game changer for me. So I love this challenge, this kind of stuff. Yeah, you're right. It changes me.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Mike.
You too.
Indeed.
Good being with
Yep.
you. Good to know you.
Thank you.
Thank you.